there's another chapter that you're going to write. And a lot of times your deepest hurt becomes your greatest ministry.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive State Podcast. It's your host, Dr. V. That's right, VUU, Dr. Vu, coming at you. I'm a triple board certified MD, performance and longevity expert, and it is my pleasure to be your host on this show because, through this show, I really get to learn from the world's experts in health and wellness and business, in finances, and how to really raise our life to the next level, how to raise our health to the next level, how to raise our energy to the next level. And thanks to viewers like you who are supporting the podcast, this show continues to grow. So thank you, thank you, thank you. If you've gotten any value from the show, please support it by liking, commenting, down below, subscribing to the podcast, and sharing it with your family and friends. And if you really want to help us grow, go to ratethispodcast.com/thrivestate and please leave us 5 stars because your reviews really help the show take off to the next level. Now, I'm really excited today because I get to talk to somebody about a really important concept, the concept of mindset. As you know, it is one of the 7 bioenergetic elements, and mindset and our thoughts really kind of dictate how we feel, right? How we think, what we're thinking, what we're focusing on, and particularly what we're placing meaning to kind of creates how we feel, and how we feel dictates what we do. And again, it is the things that we do over and over and over again, our habits that determine our success in life, in health, in our relationships, in our business, in our work. All those things stem from our habits. And where do those habits lie? How do we maximize our habits? Well, one of those things is mindset, and understanding that we've got tons of thoughts, anywhere from 70 to 80,000 thoughts that go through our mind on a day-to-day basis, and knowing that about 80% of them are bound to be negative. But if we can be aware that that's the case, and we don't listen to that 80% and know that those are just fleeting thoughts and that can go away, and start to direct our focus on the thoughts that empower us, the thought that make us feel good, then we've got a new direction in life. We've got a new direction of actions that we can take that will take us to that next level of health, of relationships, and all those things that we want. So I'm super excited for you to hear more from our guest, Jordan Montgomery. He's actually the owner of Montgomery Companies and is a highly sought after performance coach and keynote speaker whose clients include business executives, sales organizations, and entrepreneurs. From small town Iowa, he has become a dominant force in the performance coaching industry. He's actually traveled around the country speaking and coaching executives from Fortune 500 companies, professional athletes, and salespeople. Jordan's authentic, engaging, and powerful presentations have become nationally recognized. He's actually shared the stage with Aeneas Williams, Rory Vaden, Ron White, David Ackers, Elizabeth Smart, and Tom Ferry. In addition to his work speaking and coaching, he is an accomplished business leader who has managed top performing sales teams in the financial services industry. Jordan actually resides in Tiffin, Iowa with his wife, Ashley. And just like me, he's a girl dad. He's got 3 daughters, Audrey, Claire, and Olivia. Just when he lights up talking about them, as my daughters do me, you could see he is a family man first. And that's what I love about him. He's able to say that he is a family man with a business and not a businessman with a family. You'll see that distinction and hear more of that distinction in our podcast below. When he's not spending time coaching or speaking, Jordan spends time with his family and enjoys the outdoors. He's a lover of sports and all things Iowa Hawkeyes. You'll get to see more of this in his Instagram, so I recommend you follow him on Instagram and listen to this conversation. It's going to blow your mind. Ladies and gentlemen, Jordan Montgomery. Jordan Montgomery. Welcome to the Thrive State Podcast, brother.
Dr. V, thanks for having me, bro. I love your energy. I love all that you're putting out into the world. And it's an honor, man, to be with you. So thank you.
Man, your energy is very magnetic. And I was looking at your Instagram, seeing you do content with your daughters. You're a girl dad yourself. You've got 2 bonus daughters, a daughter of your own. And just seeing how you make everything work together is a beautiful thing to see.
Well, we share a lot in common, right?
Yeah.
Your background and my background, and there's some stark differences, but there's a lot of commonality.
Right.
And I just appreciate the way that you put your story on display. I try to do the same thing, and we've been really fortunate. I've been really fortunate, and I'm thankful to be a girl dad, thankful for Audrey and Claire, my two daughters that I came into by way of marriage. And it's been a good journey, man. It's been really fun.
I can't wait to dissect it a little bit more, but the people in the audience love this 5 to Thrive, which is really a lubrication for the conversation we're about to have. So are you ready to play 5 to Thrive, 1,000 points each? Don't worry, they don't mean anything, but are you ready to go?
I'm gonna try to get as many points as I can. I don't know the scoring system, but I'm ready. I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Question number 1. What in your life brings you the most joy?
Oh man, I would say my family. I'm the happiest and most fulfilled when I'm with my family. Maybe that's a cliche answer, faith and family, but yeah, when I'm with my family and I'm connected to my faith, I'm most content.
All right, sounds good. Number 2, as a child, what did you dream to become?
As a child, I just wanted to be a business owner. My dad is a painting contractor, so he's a blue collar entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I come from a little small town in Iowa. So, I just wanted to own a company, it's funny, Dr. V, because I would have said like a construction company. I can't make anything with my hands. Like I'm the least person in the world, but I watched my dad do that. And I just wanted to be like my dad. So from a young age, it was either a professional athlete, which obviously was way out of the picture, or a, blue collar business owner.
Oh, okay, great. Number 3, what is the biggest challenge you had to overcome in life?
Biggest challenge. I got fired from a job that I thought I would have forever at 27 years old. It's by far my biggest challenge.
All right. Question number 4. What is your favorite childhood memory?
Favorite childhood memory? Man, I have so many of them. I was fortunate to have a great childhood. We spent hours playing in this creek behind my house. And what I remember about that, Dr. V, is when I was young, I had a really big imagination. And I think as we get older, that the imagination slows. I remember, man, just dreaming things up in my backyard and playing with my friends, and like anything was possible. And we had so much fun playing in that creek, playing in the backyard with big imagination. That's my favorite childhood memory.
Oh, that's so good, because I almost feel like imagination is what we need to have injected into our lives as adults to kind of raise our energetic states a little bit more. Last question for you. And so far, out of 4 questions, you got 4,500 points. So a few extra credit points for you. And the last thing, what are you most proud of? Aside from your family, what are you most proud of?
Yeah, most proud of. Yeah, my family's the cliche answer, right? I'm probably most proud of how I've kept certain relationships in my life. I think as we get older, it's easy to distance ourselves from certain people.
Yeah.
Maybe distance pulls you apart, or you just kind of forget where you came from. I'm not going to call myself the most grounded person, but I have a really strong connection to the town where I grew up. My parents don't live there. I probably in many ways do different work than a lot of my friends, but I try really hard to maintain relationships with people where I'm from, and I'm proud of that. That's
amazing. And thank you for scoring 5,500 points, 500 over. You are an overachiever. I'm really glad to have known that. And I do want to go back to, to some of those questions, because, I think it will give our audience a sense of who you really, really are. But part of the reason why I wanted you on this show is I know you coach and you speak, you work with like CEOs, you work with C-suite executives, you work with the top of the top. And here's a kid from really small town Iowa, where probably when you were growing up, was there anybody doing any coaching or anything that you're doing right now?
Well, I think I had a lot of people that coached me, indirectly. I don't know that they knew they were coaching me, and I don't know that I knew I was being coached. But I just had a lot of mentors, from a really early age. I had some great teachers, some great coaches in the various sports that I played. I had some leaders at my local church that we attended. So I was fortunate to be around a lot of great coaches from a really early age. And I think some of the best coaches in the world are teachers in elementary schools
Yeah.
and, high school basketball coaches. And you don't have to be this super complex person or somebody who works with the best of the best to be a great coach. I learned most of the most important lessons that I've learned from the people that I grew up with and the people that coached me for nothing when I was nobody at a really early age. So yeah, I've been fortunate to be around a lot of great people, but I've also spent a lot of time with people that do what I do now and certainly have benefited from that as well.
And that's something I want to get into because it didn't seem like you were exposed to professional coaching at some point. You grew up, and what was the job that you got fired from? Was that something at that point that you thought you were going to do for the rest of your life?
Yeah, I had a career in financial services and I thought for sure, I'm like, man, I'm going to do this forever and I'm going to build a big financial planning practice. I got fired and then I got quickly rehired. But when I got fired, it made me think about my life's journey and where I was spending my time and energy. And when I got fired, Dr. V, I lost a lot of money. It hurt my reputation. My identity was rocked because I had found all of my identity and my achievement, my accomplishment, and my bank account. I was really living for who I was as a businessman. And when that was taken away from me, it just really rocked me from the inside out. So I got back on my feet. I lost a lot of money. And I started to think about like, what do I really want to give my time, treasure, and talent to? And I had a guy that I knew by the name of Ben Newman, who's still a close friend of mine today. And he was in the space that I'm in now.
Yeah.
And I was on my back porch. I was still in the financial planning world, although my business had sort of been rocked. And, I told Ben, I said, hey, Ben, I'd like to do what you do. And he's like, well, just do it. So I opened a coaching business kind of on the side, thinking I'll always just sort of do this on the side. And by God's grace and with the help of some good people, over the course of about 1 year, we blossomed. It was actually less than that, maybe about 6 months. We replaced the revenue from the financial planning business in the coaching business. So it happened very quickly. And it was a result of a lot of long-standing relationships. So I don't want to make that sound like it was everything that I did inside of 6 months.
Right.
I looked at my wife and I just said, hey, let's launch this business. Let's do it full time. And we did, and we've never looked back.
That's brilliant. And in seeing your success is very, very inspirational. But one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on also, and you telling that story, I think, is perfect timing, because there are many people who have just gone through this pandemic and they've lost everything that they claim, to their identity, whether it be income, whether it be their job, and they're at a place where they need to be starting over. You said you picked yourself back up before you started to talk to, your mentor. What did that entail really at that point? When everything is stripped from you, what are maybe the first steps you need to do to start to pick yourself up?
Well, I think the first thing I did is I asked a lot of questions, and I've always said brokenness is a powerful position.
Yeah.
Because when you're broken, you're willing to listen. A wise man keeps many counselors. And I wasn't keeping any counselors. I didn't have a lot of counsel in my life. I wasn't asking for feedback. I wasn't getting feedback. I wasn't asking questions. I was sort of just doing my own thing. And I thought I had life figured out, and I didn't, clearly. And so when I was broken, I started praying more often. I started seeking counsel from people that knew me really well. And I started asking life's more difficult questions, more important questions, like, what is the purpose for my life? How am I going to use the gifts that I've been given? What do I need to change? What do I need to fix? What are my blind spots? And in asking some of those questions, I grew in my self-awareness. And because I grew in my self-awareness, I was able to put my life back together in sort of a unique and special way. So I needed that. I needed sort of that penthouse to outhouse experience. I needed to be broken. And for me, brokenness was a really powerful position.
And it was something that you knew didn't define you. It really seemed like you had the intuition and the wherewithal to know that it was only going to be temporary. And maybe the answers were just a few questions away from the people that were important to you.
Yeah. Somebody is listening to this show right now, in this conversation right now, and they're broken.
Yeah.
And so if that's you, I just want to say to you, like, there's another chapter that you're going to write. And a lot of times your deepest hurt becomes your greatest ministry. Now that doesn't always play out professionally. Okay. So I don't mean to say, oh, like you're going to build a business and help people. Well, maybe, but maybe you just grow in your compassion, and maybe you just grow in your empathy. Maybe you develop new relationships. Maybe you develop a new perspective that's really beautiful and powerful. And so I just believe that some of the best things that are born into our life come out of just real adversity and valley and struggle. I know for me, there is no way I'd be doing what I'm doing now. And there's no way I'd be married to my wife. And there's no way I'd have 3 wonderful daughters if I didn't get buried at 27 years old.
Very beautiful. I mean, Ram Dass has a very beautiful phrase. He says, struggle is really the sandpaper for our awakening. And, I had multiple different awakenings in my life for sure. And, I love, I think I heard you on a different podcast. It could have been with your mentor, Ben, or it could have been with somebody else, but you mentioned a quote from Brene Brown of how life is different if you own your story. Would you mind sharing that quote and dive into a little bit of?
Yeah, the direct quote from Brene Brown is, when you deny the story, it defines you. When you own the story, you can write a brand new ending. And there was this really crazy thing that happened in my life, Dr. V, like when I owned the story, because for a long time I didn't. It was hard for me to talk about that. It was hard for me to own it. I made excuses. I pointed the finger. I placed blame. And then even after I started to accept the story, I wasn't really ready to tell it. And there is a right time and a wrong time to tell your story. Brene Brown also says this, you're ready to tell the story when it no longer affects your current identity.
Yeah.
And so I started to tell the story. Like I got to a place in my life where it was no longer affecting my current identity. In other words, I could talk about it in a way that didn't make me anxious or insecure. And so when that happened, my life took off. Doors opened wide, huge professional opportunity, new relationships in my life personally. I was more fulfilled, more content, happier, like so many amazing things happened. And it was that adage of like, my life was being defined by that story because I was denied. I just couldn't own it. And the minute I owned it, it was like, hey, dude, pick up the pen. God gave you a second chance. Like, write a new story. And by the way, this is like chapter 2. And you got chapter 3, 4, 5, and 6, but you can't write those chapters until you write the second one. We need to get to work on writing chapter 2. And man, when I started writing chapter 2, everything's changed.
That's beautiful. And the other reminder is this: nobody wants to read, a story that doesn't have a plot twist and things in there. I mean, if things are great in the beginning and things are great at the end, that doesn't make for a very good story or movie.
Yes, that's it. That's exactly right. Amen. Hey, preach it, because it's so true. And we all have that story. Like, here's the deal. I'm not any different than anybody else who's listening. Every one of us goes through tough things, whether it's with your health, your family, your profession. Everybody listening has been through some adversity, and every one of us also has a story that we've struggled to own. Now, for some of us, we've started to own it, or some of us, we now own it. But for all of like, nobody just went through something tough and was like, hey, let me just talk about it to everybody. Like, it takes time, but when we get to the other side of it, and once we can own it, accept it, and then tell it and talk about it in a way that serves and impacts others, man, watch out, because you could be a force for good.
Oh, wow. What amazing advice. People have been asking me recently, and I wanted to get your take on this. Some people are just feeling stuck, because maybe their career has been taken away and life is just different now. And they feel like whatever they're doing right now isn't the thing. And they don't know how to get to the next thing. And people are searching for clarity. So my questions to you are, 1, do you need to have clarity before you start moving forward? And 2, if you don't have that clarity, what might be the first step you can take to start kind of figuring out what to do next if you're feeling stuck?
I just had a conversation earlier today with my friend, Heather Monahan, and she said this, and I'm just going to quote Heather. She said, take messy action. Take messy action. And I think that's a beautiful way to respond to the question that you just asked. I probably would have said something similar, but different than that. Take messy action. Done is better than perfect. You don't have to sit around and get clarity. Just do something. Mood follows action, right? I mean, if you want to change the way that you feel, take action, take a step. It doesn't have to be the perfect step. You just got to worry about the next step. So don't worry about the 5-year picture and the 10-year picture. Just worry about today and what you're going to do with the day that you've been given. Yesterday's gone. Tomorrow's not promised. Live into the next 12 hours in front of you and just do something with it. And I think if you live that way, you're going to be fine. And I also think vision's important. So I don't want to minimize the importance of having a vision and fighting for clarity, because I do think fighting for clarity is really important.
Right.
But I think clarity and having a vision needs to be married with messy action. It's a both and, right? It's have a vision, think about where you want your life to go, and then take messy action. And as far as like having a vision or creating the vision, what I would give to the people listening is start with who and then work on what. A lot of people work on what and then try to figure out who. And so what I mean by that is figure out who you want to become before you figure out what you want to accomplish. Before you set all your revenue goals and all your production goals, work on your values. Think about like your family, your identity. I mean, those things are ultimately what's going to drive what you accomplish anyway. Right. And the problem is if you don't figure out who before what, your goals could take you to a place that you never intended to go. And that was my story at 27 years old. I set my goals before my values, and my goals took me to a place that I never really intended to be at. I think it's just important that we prioritize who before what.
Oh, that's a really, really great question. So, having a vision of the who at the time when, maybe you were at your probably at your lowest low, and you had an idea of who you wanted to become, was it just a matter of taking action consistent to that who? And did you find yourself trying to embody that person, at that stage in your life?
Yeah, it's a deep and powerful question. I think a lot of times we have to be forced to think about who.
Yeah.
And that's sort of my point, right? Is like, don't wait until the bottom falls out to start thinking about who you want to become. Like if I could go back and give myself like the 22-year-old version of me advice, I would say, brother, like think about who you're becoming. And think about it this way. The actions you take at 22 and 23 and 24 affect the future kids that you don't have right now. You haven't met them. Right? The actions you're taking today are going to affect your future spouse that you haven't met. And I couldn't connect any of those dots. I was just sort of living, I was just having fun. Like I was just trying to make money and have a good time and party. And there's nothing wrong with that unless you spend zero time thinking about who you're becoming. And that was my story, right? Is I was so caught up in the what, and I wasn't focused on the who.
Yeah. Well, I mean, great advice. And I love the advice about taking messy action. And I tell people, energy follows movement. And if you're feeling stuck and you can't think of what to do, and if you're not doing anything, you're going to stay in those thoughts. Those thoughts are going to just keep going. So how do you start to shift the states? You shift it by doing some exercise or taking action. In that action, you're either going to love it and say, shit, that's not for me. Or you figure out, hey, it starts to pull forward. The messy action will kind of direct more creativity and give you an idea of the things that start to light you up or the things that you don't like. So it'll give you some answers. So I love the fact that you encourage people to take messy action.
It's about attempting stuff too, right? Dr. V, it's about saying, hey, I'm going to try this. We don't step outside the box, we blow it up. I want to live outside the box. I want to try new things continually. And if you're willing to try new things and take action, it increases your humility and you grow in your confidence. And so I think what you just said is super profound.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people want to know, you are really kind of blowing up. Your business is like booming. You're a dad of 3. You've got a beautiful relationship. How do you balance all those things? And what rituals that you have or habits that you have that you feel are most important to make all that work?
Well, I've got this phrase that I took from a friend of mine, Jeff Woods. He said, I want to be a family man with a business, not a businessman with a family.
Yeah.
And I just know for me, Dr. V, if I win inside the walls of my home, everything else works out. If I lose, if I'm failing inside the walls of my home, things do not work out. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of days where I fail. Like I'm not perfect. There's times where I'm not as present as I should be as a dad.
Yeah. This episode of the Thrive State podcast is brought to you by the Thrive State Accelerator. The Thrive State Accelerator is actually a home course that I developed using the exact same techniques I work with my celebrity clients, CEOs, and executives on how to get them to the Thrive State. The Thrive State Accelerator teaches you how to master your 7 bioenergetic elements. That's sleep, nutrition, movement, stress and emotional mastery, relationships, our thoughts and mindset, as well as purpose. In this Thrive State Accelerator, you're also going to get a bonus module on optimization. That's how I talk about supplementation, peptides, all the optimization techniques I use with my clients to get them to the Thrive State. Now, for some of you who are just joining us for the first time, you guys might be wondering, what is the Thrive State? Well, the Thrive State is actually the energy, the epigenetic environment we give to ourselves, telling our DNA how to act and how to respond. And if we want optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, if we can master these 7 bioenergetic elements, our ability to have those 3 things that we just said, optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, is at its greatest. And it also prevents you from getting chronic symptoms like brain fog, being overweight, feeling sluggish, acne, pain, all these chronic symptoms, as well as preventing you from getting chronic disease. So getting to that Thrive State is really getting to that state to master being that very best version of yourself so you could show up for you, for your family, for your business, everything that's important to you. So go ahead, check it out right now at kienvu.com/accelerator and use coupon code podcast25 for 25% off. Now back to the podcast.
You know, there's times where I don't serve or love my wife, maybe the way that I should, or I'm short with my wife, right? I mean, I fall short way more often than I'd like to inside the walls of my home. But it doesn't mean that I quit working on that person, right? Being a dad and being a husband.
Yeah.
And I want to be respected most by people who know me the best. And so I want to love my girls. I want to love my wife. I want to be remembered for somebody who was ultra present at home. And man, I think in today's world, especially for young, driven people who are type A, and who want to accomplish a lot, that message has never been more important.
Yeah.
So practical tools, here's some practical tools. Schedule time with your family. Schedule time with your family. Now, a lot of people hear that and they're like, why would you schedule time with your kids? Like, your kids aren't a client. Like, why do you need to build them into your calendar? Well, okay. I'll just say this. If you're not willing to do that, your ego is getting in the way. If you're not willing to say, I got to put time on if you think that you are just so ultra focused as a parent and that you do what you need to do every day as a parent. It's like, no, I always get quality time with my kids. It's never an issue. Like, that's an ego thing. So just set the ego aside and say, hey, here's the 3-hour block for my kids. Like, I'm going to put the phone away. I'm going to roll around on the floor. We're going to play games. We're going to be silly. We're going to bake food, whatever, and schedule it in. I just think if you don't do that, it's really, really hard to be ultra focused and ultra present in a world where everybody wants your time. And we're fighting really, really hard for some things that we probably shouldn't be fighting for. So that would be one practical tool. And then the other thing is I would just say, get away, get off the grid with your family, spend time in different environments where you can just truly be present. I know when I'm in familiar environments, I just become more easily distracted. So if it's, the local park, we run into a bunch of people we know. If it's, the office, again, I run into a bunch of people I know. I got to get away with my family and just create some memories off the grid where we can unplug and just be, free from distraction.
That's beautiful. The calendar is something I find so important because if you show me somebody's calendar, I can tell you what their health is like. I can tell you what their relationships are like. I can tell you what level of success that, based on their calendar, because if you put it in your calendar, you follow through, those are the things that you pride yourself and have priority. And those are the things that have priority in your life. So if you want to have a balanced life, your calendar should be balanced as well.
Yeah, I agree. And it's less about balance for me. And it's more about just the art of being fully present.
Yeah.
Balance is elusive. If you're worried about balance, you're going to constantly be anxious, right? Like, I got to have this equal. Well, there's certain seasons of your life where you're going to work more. And then there's other seasons of your life where you're going to work less. So when I'm working, I'm going to be fully present. My relationship right now, when I'm hanging out with Dr. B on a podcast, my relationship with my daughters is not blossoming. In this moment, I'm not making moments. I'm not making memories with my daughters. I'm just not, right? I'm fully present with you.
You are.
But in a couple hours, I'm going to be fully present with my daughters, not thinking about this podcast. And that's what I'm going to fight for. And, I had a conversation with Bob Goff recently, and this really touched me. He said, when my wife and I are apart, we don't discuss geography. And I said, well, like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I travel a lot. Bob's one of the top authors and speakers in the world. He said, so I just, I learned a long time ago, we just agreed I'm not going to talk about where I'm going. Because if I talk about where I'm going, when we connect, our conversation will be all about where I'm at and what I've experienced and the conference and the people I met. He said, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the things that matter. I want to talk about, our family, our kids, our grandkids, the bright spots in our day. I don't want to talk about all this, the thing that I saw and the person that I met. And I thought that's great wisdom. That's setting boundaries. And maybe it sounds a little unique or funny, but I went, wow. I mean, talk about being intentional with your time and setting boundaries. That when Bob shared it, it just really touched me.
I forgot who said this. It could have been Brendan Bouchard, but he was saying, people don't want presents. They want presence. They want your presence. Yeah. And so let me ask you this last question. I know we're short on time, but let me ask you this question. In a day and age where people can be so easily distracted on social media or with all the things that are out there, how do you cultivate the ability to focus and the ability to be present with those in front of you?
So full disclosure, I'm working very hard at this.
Yeah.
And, sometimes I struggle too with people like that. I feel like there's a lot of people in our space that act like they've got that figured out.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is the most distracted era in human history. There's 6 million apps on the Android and the iPhone. The average Facebook user is going to spend 2 years of their life on Facebook. The average Instagram user checks Instagram 150 times per day. The average American looks at their phone 450 times per day. So for us to act like, for anybody to say, oh, I've got this figured out, here's the 3 things you got to do. I'm like, man, I don't know. I think part of what you have to do is just own it. Like every day, like, okay, I'm a dude in need of help. I need boundaries. I need accountability. I need systems and I need processes so that I can stay focused. And if I don't have accountability, boundaries, systems, and processes, I'm screwed because I got a squirrel brain and my mind is going all over the place. So as far as like tools go, I think you got to have time where you're away from your phone. You got to have quiet time. You got to have time like just to think and be still. I'm not going to act like I have that every day because I don't. I wish I did. It's something I'm fighting for. But you got to have time where you just disconnect and unplug. I think also you got to be really good at saying no to things. As we mature, we don't mature with our yes, we mature with our no. And I think we forget that sometimes. We think the next chapter or the next level of success is all about saying yes to more things, and it's not. It's about saying no. Steve Jobs is a great example. Now, I think in his personal life, there were, he's a pretty driven dude, maybe sacrificed some things in his personal life. But from a business standpoint, when Steve Jobs took over as the CEO of Apple in the late 90s, he was rehired. Apple had 350 company initiatives. And they said no. He came in and he said, we're going to ditch 340 initiatives that were funded, which meant like people lost their job. People were pissed off, angry, upset. And he said, we're just going to focus on these 10 things. And as a result, Apple became one of the top companies in the world. So I think part of focus is going small, right? It's understanding that actually the art of doing more is found through fewer activities. And it's answering the question like, what am I going to do today that creates the highest impact? And I think instead of that question, we ask the question, what do I need to do today? And that's a bad question. It should be, what am I going to do today that generates the highest impact?
Ooh, what a great way to kind of close this off. Thrive State listeners, what are you going to do today to create the most impact? Now, before I get to my very last question, where do people find you to hire you to speak, to work with you as a coach, whatnot? What's the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, probably Instagram. So Jordan M. Montgomery on Instagram are fairly active. I think a lot like you, Dr. V. And I love what you've done with your brand, by the way. You have such an awesome brand and you're giving so much to so many through your social media platforms. LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Our website is montgomerycompanies.com. We'd love to engage with anybody listening. If you got a question, a thought, you got something you want to share, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a direct message. We'd love to connect.
Awesome, Jordan. Jordan, thank you so much for your time. Last question. No points this time because I'm sure you're going to nail it. But what has been your best medicine?
Best medicine. Yeah, it's going to sound like such a cliche answer, but it's gratitude. And it's just being thankful for the simple things in life. And I don't mean like friendships, relationships, money, like literally, being thankful for the shirt on my back and the roof over my head and running water. And when I stop for those things, and I'm thanking God for those things, my perspective shifts, because there's a lot of people in our world that don't have those simple things. And if you have those simple things, you're blessed and you've got a lot going for you. And so for me, it's gratitude, which is tied to perspective, which is ultimately tied to joy.
Beautiful. Gratitude being your best medicine. Thank you for joining us on the Thrive State podcast, Jordan.
Hey, Dr. V, listen, you are a great podcast host. You ask awesome questions. You're engaged. You're energetic. I know that you've accomplished a lot in the early stages of life, but I believe strongly for you that your best is yet to come. And I'll be following your journey, man. Look forward to staying connected.
All right. Thanks so much, Jordan. Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Thrive State podcast. And if this podcast is bringing a lot of value to you, if you find that your life is just improving with this podcast, that your life is getting to the next level, please consider supporting it. And here's a few ways you can do so. You can do so by liking this video and commenting on this video, and also sharing this video with your friends and family. Another thing you can do is go to ratethispodcast.com/ThriveState. Go ahead and leave us a 5-star review there. It will really, really help this show grow. And this will give me more time so that I could actually give more content to you, just like you got in this episode. And if you haven't already picked up a copy of my book, Thrive State, Your Blueprint for Optimal Health, Longevity, and Peak Performance, you can pick it up now. It became a #1 new release in longevity. Go to thrivestatebook.com. And if you enjoy the book, please consider leaving us a review as well. And the last thing you can do, if you're liking everything here and you want to work more closely with me as well as my team to get you into the Thrive State, go to kienvu.com/accelerator and consider joining the home course, the Thrive State Accelerator. It's really the course that I use. It's the concepts that I use personally when I work with CEOs, celebrities, and my high-profile clients to get them to the Thrive State. Again, the Thrive State Accelerator at kienvu.com/accelerator. And because you're a listener of this podcast, I want you to save 25% by using the coupon code podcast25. I hope we continue to give value to you. And remember always, you are your best medicine.